Tonight, there is a stunning claim that could change everything in the Nancy Guthrie case. A former SWAT team leader now says, despite months of investigation, that the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Office have no suspects. Chad Ayers.
Roads are blocked off. Armored vehicles are rolling through one of the most expensive zip codes in the state of Arizona. And at the center of it all, a name that hasn't left the headlines in nearly 2 months. Nancy Guthrie. Still missing. Still no answers. But tonight, something has shifted. The Catalina foothills doesn't look like a place where evil visits. Wide, sun-bleached streets. Homes that cost more than most people will earn in a lifetime. Neighbors who know not just each other's names, but each other's cars, their gardeners, which morning belongs to which jogger. This is a neighborhood that watches itself. And yet, on the night of January 31st, bleeding into the early hours of February 1st, 2026, an 84-year-old woman was taken from inside her own home. Her blood was found on the front porch. Her doorbell camera cut out at exactly 1:47 in the morning. And by the time anyone realized something was wrong, she was already gone. Her name is Nancy Guthrie. Her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, co-anchors NBC's Today Show. And as of right now, nearly 2 months have passed, and Nancy has not been found. But here is what has changed. And it changes everything. Federal agents have gone back to that neighborhood. Not for a routine sweep. Not to revisit old notes. They came back with a list, and on that list were specific questions, aimed at a specific address. A house that sits very close to Nancy's front door. A house that was recently vacant. NewsNation's senior investigative reporter Brian Entin, who has spent more time on the ground in Tucson covering this case than virtually any other journalist, broke this story. According to sources with law enforcement knowledge, the FBI returned to the Catalina foothills and began asking pointed, name-by-name questions about that rental property. About who lived there. About when they left. His exact framing: there's one neighbor that moved out before Nancy disappeared, and they have been asking more questions about that situation. At almost the same time, investigative reporter Dave Mack from Crime Stories went on air with a completely different account. According to his sources, the renters of that same property didn't leave before the kidnapping, they left immediately after it. One reporter says before. One says after. Those are not two versions of the same story. They are two entirely different stories, each carrying an entirely different set of implications. The FBI knows which one is true. And the FBI is not talking. Now, before we go further, you need to understand who is doing the analyzing. Because in a case this high profile, credibility is the entire ballgame. Bob Krygeear is not a theorist. He is a retired commander from Pima County's own SWAT team, the same county, the same jurisdiction, the same terrain where this crime took place. He spent nearly 3 decades running high-risk tactical operations in environments exactly like the Catalina foothills. He knows what those streets look like at 2 in the morning. He knows what it takes to execute a targeted mission in a neighborhood like that, and not leave a trace. In an earlier exclusive interview with Parade magazine, Krygeear assessed the available evidence, the masked figure on the doorbell camera, the gloves, the holstered weapon, the deliberate hour, and delivered a clear verdict. I do think that this was a very intentional crime. I think it was targeted and specific to this house. Planned. Targeted. Intentional. But in a follow-up Parade exclusive published March 19th, Krygeear went further. This time, he wasn't just describing the suspect's behavior. He was describing the suspect's physical infrastructure, where, in his professional judgment, the plan was built. In operational language Krygeear has used throughout his career, a staging location is where you preposition. Where you store what you need. Where you exist between reconnaissance trips in a way that raises absolutely no suspicion. You have a reason to be there. You have a car in the driveway. Nobody looks twice. Krygeear told Parade that a nearby rental would give someone exactly that, a cover story. And he was careful to define the difference between a cover story and an alibi. An alibi explains where you were after something happens. A cover story justifies your presence before anything has happened at all. Someone sitting in a car on a quiet street at midnight doesn't raise a single eyebrow because they live next door. Then he said something more specific. He told Parade that operating out of a nearby vacant property would put someone in a position to be, quote, a little bit more under the radar, to see the activity of the neighborhood, to see the comings and goings of people. The timing of things. Of all the people. Including Nancy. The timing of things. Including Nancy. That is pre-operational surveillance. That is the foundational phase of every serious planned abduction. No one walks up to a stranger's door in a ski mask with a backpack and a holstered weapon on impulse. They observe first. They map the routines. They identify the window, the moment a target is most isolated, most predictable, most alone. And from approximately 50 feet away, a conservative estimate for neighboring properties in that part of the foothills, weeks of patient observation tells you everything. What time the bedroom light goes out. Whether the front door or the garage gets used. When a car appears and when it doesn't. Whether there are overnight visitors. Which cameras face the street and which ones don't. Now look at what we know about Nancy's final evening. At 5:32 p.m. on January 31st, she traveled by Uber to a family dinner. She was dropped back home at 9:48 p.m. 2 minutes later, 9:50, the garage door had closed. She was inside. The neighborhood was dark. No visitors. No company. Then, at 1:47 a.m., her doorbell camera went dark. That is a window of just under 4 hours. Alone. Quiet. No witnesses. If someone had been watching that house, from a property next door, for any meaningful stretch of time before that night, they would have known that window existed. They would have built their operation around it. The man who appeared at her door arrived prepared. Ski mask. Gloves. Long pants, jacket. A holstered handgun. A 25-liter backpack. The FBI has confirmed he is male, approximately 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches, average build. Months later, no arrest. No named suspect. Every expert who has examined that footage has said the same thing: this is not what impulse looks like. This is a kit, assembled for a specific task, on a specific night. Before the FBI came back with its questions, 2 neighbors were already asking them. Neighbor Laura spoke directly to Brian Entin on camera. She told him there was a rental nearby, and whoever lived there had moved out within days of the abduction. She had noticed the car was gone. She couldn't say with absolute certainty whether it disappeared before or after February 1st, but she knew it was wrong enough to make a phone call. Her words: "I thought it's probably nothing, but I'm going to call and let them know that there was somebody living there, and they're not there anymore." In a neighborhood where everyone knows every car, a vehicle that simply vanishes, no moving truck, no goodbye, no announcement, registers. Then there's Aldine Meister. Nearly 30 years in the Catalina foothills. She raised the vacant property herself in the very first week, without being prompted. She told Entin, "The neighbors on the other side of me moved out. I wanted them to check that house. Week 1. She flagged it in week 1. But Meister also reported something else. In the 2 to 3 weeks before Nancy disappeared, she saw a man walking through the neighborhood who didn't belong there. Hat pulled low. Hunched over. Not in workout gear. Not in hiking clothes. Street clothing. Moving through a neighborhood where everyone fits, and he did not. Her words: "I noticed this strange guy with his hat down really low. He was kind of hunched over, not in walking or hiking gear. I thought that was weird because that's not normal." Hold that image. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer, one of the most consistently credentialed voices publicly analyzing this case, has assessed that the masked individual who appeared at Nancy's doorbell camera on January 11th, 3 weeks before the abduction, was conducting a trial run. That is her professional judgment. It is also worth noting that the Guthrie family, in their most recent public statement, issued in coordination with federal investigators, specifically asked the community to search their memories for 2 dates, January 11th and January 24th. Not general time frames. Those exact dates. When a family working alongside the FBI asks the public to focus on 2 specific evenings weeks before the crime, those dates carry investigative weight. Now here is the detail from Krygear's parade interview that I believe is the most significant public statement any credentialed expert has made about this case since the FBI released the doorbell footage. He told Parade that a vacant property, and I want to be precise here, out of the prying eye of the neighborhood could also be a location to set up surveillance equipment. That such equipment could be easily stashed in a structure or on the property without anyone knowing. We are no longer talking about someone standing at a window. Krygear is describing the possibility, in his professional judgment, of a physical installation. A camera. A motion sensor. A monitoring device capable of observing Nancy's home for weeks without requiring any human presence at all. A feed someone could access remotely, from anywhere, while the property looked completely empty to every neighbor who walked past. The FBI understands this is operationally possible. And the fact that agents returned specifically to ask questions about that property, weeks into an active federal investigation, tells you they are taking this seriously enough to pursue it. There is a parallel thread most coverage has missed entirely, and it matters, because it tells us something about the shape of the FBI's current theory. According to Entin's reporting, agents were simultaneously asking residents for the individual names, not company names, not project descriptions, the individual names of every contractor and construction worker who had worked on houses under construction in the neighborhood in the weeks before Nancy disappeared. One resident told NewsNation that a friend of hers, someone with a house under construction nearby, was approached by federal agents and asked to provide every single name. All of them. Why does this matter alongside the vacant house investigation? Because construction workers and nearby renters share one critical characteristic: both have legitimate, unremarkable, daily access to a residential neighborhood. A pickup truck at a job site at 7 a.m. raises no eyebrows. A crew walking a property line. Workers eating lunch on the street. All of it blends into the texture of the neighborhood, without triggering the watchfulness that an unfamiliar face on foot would immediately activate. Construction crews notice things. They know which neighbors leave early. Which doors face the street. They work the same neighborhood for weeks. In Krygear's operational framework, that is an almost ideal blind for someone who needed repeated, legitimate access to observe a specific home. Former FBI agent Steve Moore offered a precise read on what this level of inquiry means. He confirmed it means retracing steps, but added the crucial point: retracing steps is not going backward. Something shook loose. A new name. A new memory. A piece of information worth cross-referencing against everything already known. 2 threads. 1 vacant rental. 1 construction worker investigation. Pursued simultaneously by federal agents. Both pointing at the same underlying question: who had legitimate cover to be near Nancy's home in the weeks before February 1st, and did someone use that cover to do something that was not legitimate at all? Here is what the forensic science tells us, and this is established investigative methodology, not speculation. Every person sheds biological material constantly and involuntarily. Skin cells. Hair. Saliva. On every surface touched regularly. In a property where someone spent even a few weeks, the concentration of what forensic scientists call touch DNA is substantial, in carpet fibers, on door frames, on windowsills, on chair backs. The sheriff of Pima County, Sheriff Nanos, has confirmed publicly that mixed DNA of unknown origin was recovered from inside Nancy's home. More than one person's genetic material, none of it belonging to Nancy or to anyone in her inner circle. His words: "We believe that we may have some DNA there that may be our suspect." The sample is mixed. The lab has reported difficulty separating the profiles. The process could take up to a year. Investigators have already turned to genetic genealogy, the same technique that identified the Golden State Killer. But here's what a second crime scene changes entirely. If the vacant house was used as a staging location, and to be clear, that is Krygear's professional assessment, not a confirmed fact, then it is not just a curiosity. It is the scene where the planning of an abduction took place. If forensic processing of that property produces biological material matching the unknown profile already recovered from Nancy's home, investigators would have something prosecutors rarely get: cross-scene DNA. 2 separate locations. 2 independent chains of custody. The same profile in both. The question that then cannot be avoided: explain your genetic material in both places. Explain why your DNA exists inside an abducted woman's home, and in the property next door. That is a fundamentally different evidentiary architecture than a single-scene sample. Let me be clear about what is confirmed, and what remains reported but unverified, because you deserve to know the difference. What is confirmed: Nancy Guthrie, age 84, was reported missing February 1, 2026. Her blood was confirmed on her front porch. Her doorbell camera disconnected at 1:47 a.m. A masked, armed suspect appeared on that footage, described by the FBI as male, 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches. Mixed DNA of unknown origin was recovered from her home. The sheriff has publicly called this a targeted abduction. The Guthrie family has offered a $1 million reward. The FBI has added $100,000. Over 13,000 tips have been submitted. Nancy has not been found. What is credibly reported but not officially confirmed: the FBI's renewed and specific interest in the vacant rental property, reported by Brian Entin through law enforcement adjacent sources. The construction worker name-by-name investigation, also reported by Entin. The timeline contradiction between Entin and Dave Mack regarding when the renters left. Krygear's staging location framework, his professional assessment, not an official finding. Coffindaffer's trial run assessment regarding January 11th, her professional judgment, not confirmed by the FBI. Every distinction drawn. Every thread named. Every source identified. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She was taken from her home in her pajamas. Without her shoes. Without her medication. In the middle of the night. Her daughter Savannah has said, publicly, that her family is in agony. If you were anywhere near the Catalina foothills between January 11th and February 1st, 2026, if you saw a vehicle that felt wrong, a face that didn't fit, a light in the window of a supposedly empty house, a car that was simply there one day and gone the next, the FBI wants to hear from you. Tip line: 1-800-CALL-FBI. Online, tips.fbi.gov. The car is gone. The house is empty. And the FBI is still trying to account for every minute of what happened inside it. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. And that is not where the story ends.